All right, this is assignment 2 for the Plague of 1665 screencast. This information is located under Plague of 1665 source material, which is on your Unit 4 tab on pvraterenglish.weebly.com. I'm going to go through this assignment and then I will go over the answers as well. So the Plague of 1665. So this plague had been around for a while, so it had already gone through Europe before, but the Black Death, which was 1348, was pretty extensive in terms of death toll. But this was the worst outbreak in England since the Black Plague in 1348. So London lost roughly 15% of its population. It's a huge number, 68,596 deaths recorded in the city, but the true number probably was over 100,000. And other parts of the country also suffered as well. The earliest cases of the disease occurred in the spring of 1665 in a parish called St. Gillies in the Fields. It was outside of London. A parish would have been like a little city, kind of like cities and countries are like divided up now, but a little parish outside the city, the main part of the city of London, called St. Gillies in the Field. And so the death rate began to rise during the heat, because bacteria loves heat. So hot summer months, and then peaked in September at its high point when 7,165 Londoners died in 1 week. Okay, so you think about that, even in terms of today of what's going on with the coronavirus, those numbers are happening again here in our current situation, our current pandemic. So rats carry the fleas. We talked about that already. The city streets with their poor hygiene, rubbish and waste. Those poor areas like Camden Town. So the rats love those areas of town, and so the fleas bit the rats. Those who could, all the wealthy, left the city. Okay, so that's why the poor were more affected than the wealthy, because the ones that could get out, got out. So they got out, got away from town. King Charles II and his courtiers left in July for Hampton Court. They also fled the city as well. Parliament was postponed. And they moved all like the Parliament, the court cases from Westminster there in London outside to Oxford. The Lord Mayor and Aldermen, which were kind of like the town council, they stayed to enforce the king's orders and try to stop the spread of the disease. So you've got the mayor and you've got these town councilors are left behind trying to keep everybody to follow the king's orders. And we're going to look at the king's orders in just a little bit here. So the wealthy are gone. The poor are going to remain with the rats and people that were already infected. Watchmen locked and kept guard over the infected houses. Parish officials provided food. Searchers looked for dead bodies and then took them at night to plague pits for burial. We'll look at what a typical burial for a plague victim would have been like in one of our assignments for next week. All trade with London and other plague towns was stopped. The border between England and Scotland is closed. So no travel. I guess extraneous travel. Trade is closed down. Borders are closed. People lost their jobs, all these things happen. Okay, so 3 types of plague. Most of the sick in 1665 and 1666 had the bubonic plague, which we talked about the stages of the bubonic plague. Those were those swellings in the armpits, groin, and neck, the headaches, vomiting, and fever. You had a 50% chance if you caught the virus, and then of those, 30% died within 2 weeks of contacting the virus. So it's spread from the bite caused by a black rat flea that carried the Yersinia pestis bacteria, is the name of the official name for the bacteria that the fleas were infected with. Worse still was the pneumonic plague. Pneumonic means it's in the lungs. It attacks the lungs. It's spread through the air, coughing and sneezing. And then even worse than that is the septicemic, which occurs when bacteria enters the bloodstream. And in this case, there was little hope for survival. Treatments at the time didn't really help because, they weren't medically advanced. Sometimes they would bleed them with leeches, which meant they would put a leech on the body and try to get rid of the impure blood. People thought impure air caused the disease, and that you could, with smoke and heat, you could purify the air. So children were encouraged to smoke to ward off the bad air. Sniffing a sponge soaked in vinegar was also an option. As the cold weather set in, the number of plague victims started to fall. This was not due to any remedies, nor was it due to the fire of London that had destroyed many houses within the walls of the city and by the River Thames. Many plague deaths had occurred in the poorest parishes outside of the city walls. Some scientists suggest that the black rat had started to develop greater resistance. If the rats didn't die, their fleas would not have to find a human host, and fewer people could be infected. Probably people started to develop a stronger immunity to the disease. That whole idea of herd immunity. Also, in plague scares after 1665, more effective quarantine methods were used for ships coming into the country. And there was never an outbreak of plague in Britain on this scale again of this plague. However, we currently have an outbreak of a pandemic of that scale and possibly larger, and currently going on there in Britain. Okay, and Britain's actually shut down right now. It's January, the first part of January. They're locking down again in a mandatory stay at home because of what's going on with Corona. Alright, so let's do the first part of that assignment, which is, let me pull it up for you really quick. And then we'll move on to the next piece of the, you can see I'm super on it right now. This is source material. There it is. Okay, so source material, plague of 1665. Number 1, what percent of London's population was lost due to this outbreak? It was 15%. 15% of deaths. The outbreak started in St. Gillies in the Fields, which is that little parish outside of London that I just talked to you about. St. St. Gillies, it's Giles in the Fields. The origin of the disease, the fleas. The fleas bit the rats, and then the fleas bit the humans. So the rats were infected with the bacteria from the dirty rubbish and all that, and then the fleas bit the rats, and then the fleas bit the humans. The poor were at greater risk of catching the plague. Poor sanitation. Overcrowding. They lived in really crowded, really dirty conditions. Also, they couldn't afford to leave. While the wealthy could get away, the poor didn't have that option. Okay? 3 types of plague and what areas of the body they affect. The first one is the bubonic. We talked about that already. The bubonic affects the lymph system, the lymphatic system, your lymph nodes. The second type is the pneumonic plague. If you're looking on how to spell these, they're in that document, that Plague of 1665 source material there on pvraderenglish.weebly.com. And then septicemic, the blood. It's their little chance of survival once it got in the blood. Septicemic plague. It's the worst. Common practice for treating the plague during the time period. Leeches, bleeding them with leeches. Smoking. Sniffing sponges soaked in vinegar. The cold weather is causing the number of plague victims to begin falling. Colder weather 3 things that the scientists believe contributed to the fact there was never an outbreak of this scale in London again. The rat developed stronger resistance. People started developing stronger immunity. And 3, more effective quarantine methods. So the rat developed a stronger resistance. People started developing stronger immunity, and there were more effective quarantine methods. Okay? All right. So the next 2 things, the next 2 materials that you are going to read on your own, you have first a source transcript from a part of a journal, and you can see the transcript here from down below that original source material that you can answer the questions. I think there are only 3 questions. Yeah, 3 questions on this little tiny paragraph here. They're on your document, which is right there. Total number of plague deaths. What do you think searchers are responsible for in borders? And then tell me what the meaning of the bold word providence means there from that transcript. Second thing, same thing. You have another source material there. Here you can see that it's the rules and orders. This is by His Majesty the King, and I just put those in a transcript underneath because I know you can't read that small source, but this is just a copy of that source material directly underneath. And you have, I think, 4 or 5 questions on that second, 5 questions. I'm sorry, 5 questions on these rules and orders. So you'll have to read a little bit here and then a little bit here to get the information that you need to complete that source material plague of 1665 activity. Okay, so you have a copy of this in Google Classroom. You can do it digitally. We did the first 8 together, and then you'll do source 1 and source 2 on your own, and make sure that you click turn in on Google Classroom, or it will not submit to me to be graded. Okay, and I will we've got one more assignment to go this week, and then you will be good for the week.